missed any part of this, you can watch it in its entirety. Other debates there. Tune in later this week. I'll be holding and hosting debates for City Council District 32 in Queens and for City Controller. And of course, please remember to vote. Early voting begins this Saturday, and Election Day is coming up on Tuesday, November 2nd. Union, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, the Columbia School of Social Work, and the Latino Leadership Institute. We're here because New Yorkers in all 5 boroughs will begin casting ballots for a long list of races, including public advocate, this Saturday. That's when early voting begins, with Election Day itself to follow on Tuesday, November 2nd. Now, over the next hour, you'll hear from the 2 major party candidates running for this citywide office. The position is currently held by Jumaane Williams, a Democrat. He is being challenged by Dr. Devi Bill, a Republican. We're excited to have both candidates here in our studios. We've done many remote debates since the pandemic began, but this will be our first in-person debate in 2 years, with precautions, including candidates who showed us proof of vaccination. Let's start with a brief rundown of what the Public Advocate does. The Public Advocate of New York City is a citywide position created in 1993.
And provided the assistance that they needed. Working with my colleagues, I'm proud to have passed almost as many bills as all of my predecessors combined. And so I know that we can't return to normal post-pandemic because it didn't work for most of us. And as your public advocate and your Democratic nominee, I know the type of progressive leadership we need right now. Part of the work we've done, we have a lot more work to do. And if you can vote for me on November 2nd to re-elect me, I'll be so proud to continue that work.
Okay, thank you. Now on to Dr. Devi Nampiaparampil.
In New York's darkest hour, the city failed in its duties. Individual New Yorkers struggled to care for their neighbors. My toddler was separated from us for 8 months so that me and my unborn baby could take care of patients. When she returned to us, we were all infected with COVID, and my husband was hospitalized. When I called the city for help because I was having contractions, the city worker responded that it was an unsafe situation and that she might call Child Protective Services. Even when I was in labor, and even hours after I had my C-section, I took care of patients virtually from my COVID isolation room.
What part of your experience should lead New Yorkers to believe that you could handle the complex job of serving as mayor of New York in an emergency? Let's start with you, Dr. Devi.
So I have a career of speaking up for fairness and for protecting the powerless. I have been a doctor for almost 20 years, a scientific researcher for 25. And early in my career, I noticed that Black patients were being treated significantly differently, worse than white patients. So I stood up for that, I corrected that, I addressed it, and I have a study to prove it. Then later, as I progressed through my career, I stood up for people with disabilities, not just individually as patients, but also to improve their entry into medical school. And ultimately, I started working at the VA and became the chief of their pain management program for the tri-state area. So I have dealt with federal bureaucracies, and I have started new programs within there where this was before the opioid crisis was even identified. I blunted that opioid crisis. I fought with drug dealers who hid behind patient privacy laws. So I am used to dealing with dangerous and challenging situations and all sorts of characters. And I have succeeded both in public life and in private life.
If you would accept his endorsement in this race.
Well, overall, in terms of Donald Trump, I think that he has highlighted a big problem that we have in this city, which is corruption across the country. Corruption, I mean, when I think about what's going on, just yesterday, New York City, night shop, and in terms of the Department of Homeless Services, there was something that came out that Aguila, this is a provider that received $250 million in money from the city contract. So basically, what I noticed is that they declared bankruptcy, and all of a sudden, all of that money and all those investigations, this Stitch James that's investigating them, a lot of it has been put to a halt because people can't look at it anymore once they decided to file for Chapter 11. So I think one thing that he brought out is that we need to look deeper in terms of corruption and what's going on, where is all this money being hidden? Because when I think about Thrive NYC and other programs that we've had in New York City, we should be aggressively looking to see where is this corruption, where's the bureaucracy hiding all of these lost funds, and what's happening to New Yorkers. In terms of accepting an endorsement, I'll accept an endorsement from anyone. I've accepted endorsements from people who like Trump, I've accepted endorsements from socialists as well. So there are a lot of people that support my campaign because I've been arguing for fairness, transparency, and predictability, which I think everybody can agree on, regardless of their political beliefs.
Do you program, do away with it, or make some alterations? Let's start with you, Dr. Devi.
So if we had a life-saving medication and only 1% of people had access to it, we would do everything we could to make it more accessible to everybody. We wouldn't destroy it so that nobody could have it. So that's how I see the Gifted and Talented program and the specialized high schools. That this is something that gives kids from low-income neighborhoods a chance, opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. We should be doing everything possible to expand that. But this is how this current administration, which the incumbent is part of, views things, that it removes these opportunities from kids rather than giving kids more. And we need to do more in terms of non-traditional education, to do more for kids with disabilities, people who have special needs as well, and try to help all children achieve their potential.
You know, having come through the GT program, having come to special...
Devi, same question. What are you hearing from the mayoral candidates that makes you think, when I'm public advocate, I may have to go a couple of rounds with them?
Well, I don't know Eric Adams, but Curtis Lewa, I have a good relationship with him. I would say, same as Jumani, that it's really more to me about the data and the analysis. So it's not, to me, so much what they're saying, but what the data would show. And as public advocate, you have access to a lot of that data. What I've noticed, though, as a serious problem, especially when I looked at NYCHA and HPD documents, is that there's a lot of information that's just completely redacted. So there's no way to really tell. There's no transparency in that system. So the first thing I would do is fight that, to be able to see what are the alternatives. We saw that in a lot of the rezoning documents for the East River project that's going on in Soho and NoHo. So the first thing I would do, which I testified against, by the way, but I would look at that and then use that to convince either candidate of my position and work with them and try to bring them to my side.
Okay. I think that brings us to the end of our time. That is going to do it for this debate. I want to thank both candidates for joining us tonight. And if you missed any part of this, you can watch it in its entirety. Other debates there. Tune in later this week. I'll be holding and hosting debates for City Council District 32 in Queens and for City Controller. And of course, please remember to vote. Early voting begins this Saturday, and Election Day is coming up on Tuesday, November 2nd. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great evening.